The great chamber of the Galactic Tribunal was silent. Thousands of alien delegates from hundreds of worlds sat in their designated seats, their many eyes fixed upon the platform at the center of the room. The air itself seemed heavy with judgment, and the lights above cast long shadows across the polished floor. Ambassador L of the High Council stood at the highest podium. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like wet stone. Four eyes blinked slowly on his elongated face, and when he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber like thunder rolling across an empty valley. "The Galactic Tribunal has reached its verdict," L announced. "The crime is expansion into restricted space. The guilty party is the human colony ship known as the Wanderer." Captain Jack stood on the defendant's platform below. His hands were locked in glowing energy cuffs that hummed softly against his wrists. He was 43 years old, with short brown hair turning gray at the temples and eyes that had seen more than most men his age. Beside him stood his first officer, Kate, a woman with red hair pulled back in a practical braid and a face that showed no fear. On his other side was Sam, the chief engineer, a stocky man with calloused hands and a mind that could fix anything. Behind them stood 209 more humans, men, women, and children, families who had left Earth seeking a new home among the stars, scientists and farmers, teachers and builders. All of them now stood accused of a crime they barely understood. L continued reading from the judgment. "The humans entered the system without authorization. They attempted to establish a settlement on Seven, a world designated as protected territory under jurisdiction. This violation of galactic law cannot go unpunished." Jack listened calmly. He had tried to explain to the tribunal that they had received no warnings, that their navigation systems had shown the system as unclaimed space, but they had not wanted to hear explanations. They had wanted someone to punish, and humanity was still new to the galactic community. They had no powerful allies, no ancient treaties to protect them. "The sentence," L said, his four eyes gleaming with something that looked very much like satisfaction, "is as follows. The colony ship Wanderer and its entire crew shall be transported to 9. They will be deposited on the surface with basic supplies. They will not be permitted to leave." A murmur passed through the chamber. 9. Even among the hardened species of the galaxy, that name carried weight. One of the human children, a boy of about 8 years old named Danny, tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom, what is 9? His mother, Lisa, pulled him close but did not answer. She did not know the details, but she could see the reactions of the aliens around them. Whatever 9 was, it frightened beings who looked like nightmares themselves. L was happy to explain. For those unfamiliar, 9 is classified as a Class 15, the highest classification in our system. The atmosphere contains corrosive compounds that burn organic tissue. The native fauna includes apex predators capable of killing a warrior in seconds. The gravity is 20% higher than galactic standard. The temperature swings between extremes that would freeze or boil most species. No civilization has ever survived on a Class 15 world. No colony has lasted more than 30 planetary rotations. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the chamber. "This is the fate of the humans. May the galaxy find peace in their absence." The alien delegates began to murmur among themselves. Some looked away, uncomfortable with the severity of the sentence. Others nodded in approval. They had always been harsh in their judgments, but this seemed extreme even by their standards. Jack did not react the way L expected. There was no begging. There were no tears. The human captain simply looked up at the ambassador and asked a question. "Class 15, you said. What exactly does that mean in terms of atmospheric composition?" L blinked all four eyes. This was not the response of a condemned man. "The atmosphere is primarily nitrogen, but with significant concentrations of sulfur dioxide and hydrogen sulfide. Breathing it unfiltered would cause severe damage to respiratory systems within minutes." Jack nodded slowly. Sulfur compounds, corrosive but manageable with proper filtration. He turned to Kate. What do you think? Kate considered the question as if they were discussing a minor engineering problem rather than a death sentence. We have the emergency filter masks. Should be good for a few months. After that, we can probably rig something from local materials. Sam scratched his chin. 20% higher gravity is going to be rough at first, but humans adapt. We will get stronger. Elle stared at them with undisguised confusion. You do not understand. 9 is a death world. No species has survived there. The predators alone number in the thousands. The plant life is often poisonous. The water sources are contaminated with heavy metals. Jack finally smiled, and there was something in that smile that made several nearby aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ambassador, Jack said, let me tell you something about where we come from. Earth, our home world, would be classified as a Class 12 by your standards. We evolved alongside predators with claws and teeth that could tear us apart. We survived ice ages that covered half our planet. We lived through plagues that killed millions. We built our civilizations on the slopes of active volcanoes and in the paths of hurricanes. And we did not just survive, we dominated. Kate stepped forward, her voice calm and clear. Your Class 15 world has dangerous animals. We have spent our entire evolutionary history learning how to kill dangerous animals. Your world has a corrosive atmosphere. We have lived in environments filled with smoke, ash, and toxic gases. Your world has high gravity. We will grow stronger because of it. Sam added, you think you are sending us to our deaths. You are sending us to a challenge. And if there is one thing humans are good at, it is rising to meet challenges. The chamber had gone completely silent. The alien delegates were watching the humans with new eyes, trying to understand these strange creatures who faced extinction with such calm. Young Danny looked up at his mother again. Mom, are we going to be okay? Lisa looked at her captain, at the quiet confidence in his eyes. She had followed Jack across the stars because she believed in him. She was not going to stop believing now. Yes, sweetheart, she said, we are going to be just fine. Elle gestured to the guards. Remove them. Transport them to 9 immediately. Let them deliver the justice this tribunal has decreed. As the humans were led away, Jack was already talking quietly with his officers. They were discussing supply inventories, survival priorities, and construction materials. They were planning. They were preparing. They expected them to die. They expected screaming and suffering and eventual silence. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. They did not land gracefully on 9. It descended fast, touched the rust-colored ground for barely 3 seconds, and then shot back into the sky as if the planet itself was contagious. The alien pilots had refused to open any windows during the entire journey. They had spoken to their human prisoners only through intercoms, and even then their voices had trembled with fear. Now the 212 humans stood on the surface of a world that was supposed to kill them. The sky above was a deep purple, streaked with clouds that looked almost green in certain light. The air smelled of rotten eggs and burning metal. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks jagged and dark against the alien sky. Strange trees with twisted trunks and leaves the color of dried blood grew in thick clusters across the landscape. Captain Jack was the first to move. He pulled his emergency filter mask over his face and took a careful breath. The air tasted strange even through the filtration system, but it was breathable. His lungs did not burn. His eyes did not water. Atmosphere is manageable, he announced to his people. Keep your masks on at all times until we can do proper testing. Laura, what are your readings? Dr. Laura, the colony's chief medical officer, was already checking her portable scanner. She was a small woman in her late 30s with dark hair and steady hands that had performed surgery under worse conditions than this. Sulfur compound levels are high but not immediately lethal. Long-term exposure without protection would cause respiratory damage. Short-term, we should be fine with the masks. Kate moved to stand beside Jack. She scanned the tree line with sharp eyes, looking for movement. We need to establish a perimeter before nightfall. We have no idea what kind of predators are out there or when they hunt. Agreed, Jack said. He turned to face his people. Men and women were holding their children close. Some faces showed fear, but most showed determination. These were colonists. They had left everything they knew on Earth to build a new life among the stars. They were not the kind of people who gave up easily. "Listen to me," Jack called out, his voice strong and clear. "They think they have sentenced us to death. They think this planet will destroy us. They are wrong. We are going to survive here. We are going to build here. And someday we are going to make them regret ever underestimating humanity." A cheer rose from the crowd. It was not loud or long, but it was real. These people believed in their captain, and more importantly, they believed in themselves. Lieutenant Cole, the head of security, pushed his way to the front. He was a tall man with broad shoulders and a face that had seen combat on 3 different worlds. "Captain, I am taking a team to scout the immediate area. We need to know what we are dealing with before we set up camp." Jack nodded. "Take 5 people. Stay in radio contact. Do not engage anything hostile unless you have no choice." Selected his team quickly and they moved out, disappearing into the alien forest with weapons drawn. The weapons were primitive by galactic standards, projectile firearms that they had not bothered to confiscate. They had probably assumed that bullets would be useless against the horrors of 9. They were about to learn how wrong that assumption was. Back at the landing site, Sam was already organizing the supplies. They had given them basic survival equipment: tents, water purification tablets, emergency rations, and simple tools. It was meant to prolong their suffering, to give them just enough hope before the planet crushed them. Sam saw it differently. He saw raw materials, he saw possibilities. "We have enough here to build a proper shelter," he told Jack. "Nothing fancy, but solid. If I can find the right kind of stone, I can reinforce the walls, make it something that will last." "Do it," Jack said. "Take whoever you need." The first hour on 9 passed without incident. The colonists worked together with quiet efficiency. They had been trained for hostile environment survival. They had expected difficulties on whatever world they eventually settled. This was not the welcome they had hoped for, but they were adapting. Then's voice crackled over the radio. "Captain, we have contact. Big predator, maybe 400 pounds. 6 legs, armored plating, lots of teeth. It is watching us from about 50 meters out." Jack grabbed the radio. "Do not provoke it. Observe and report." A long pause, then spoke again, his voice tight. "Too late for that, it is charging." The sound of gunfire echoed through the alien forest. 3 shots, 4, a pause, then 2 more. "Report," Jack demanded. Silence stretched for 5 agonizing seconds. Then's voice came back, slightly breathless but calm. "Target down. Took 6 rounds to penetrate the armor plating. Weak points are the joints between body segments and the underbelly. The thing died hard, but it died." Relief flooded through Jack, but he kept his voice steady. "Any injuries?" "Negative, we are fine. Captain, you should see this thing. It is built like a tank. If these are the predators here, we are going to need better weapons. Bring back whatever samples you can. Laura will want to study the biology. And good work." When the scouting team returned, they dragged the body of the creature with them. It was exactly as had described. 6 powerful legs ending in claws that could tear through metal, armored plates covering most of its body, a mouth filled with teeth designed for ripping and tearing. Laura examined it with professional curiosity rather than fear. "Remarkable," she murmured. "The armor is actually a form of calcium carbonate, similar to shells found on Earth crustaceans but much thicker. The muscle density is incredible. This thing was built for one purpose." "Killing," Kate said flatly. "Hunting," Laura corrected. "It is a predator, yes, but it follows biological rules. It has weaknesses, it can be understood, and anything that can be understood can be defeated. That night the colonists ate their first meal on 9. Someone had suggested cooking part of the creature they had killed. It seemed wrong to waste potential food on a world where survival was uncertain. Laura ran tests to make sure the meat was not poisonous to humans. It was not. In fact, it was highly nutritious. When properly cooked over a fire built from the strange alien wood, the creature tasted remarkably like wild boar. The children ate eagerly, their fear forgotten in the simple pleasure of a warm meal. Jack sat apart from the others, staring up at the purple sky. A single light moved among the unfamiliar stars, the observation satellite watching them, recording their expected demise. Kate sat down beside him. They are waiting for us to die. Let them wait, Jack said. We are going to give them something very different to watch. Above them, the satellite recorded the small cooking fire, the makeshift shelters, and the humans moving with purpose rather than despair. The analysts who reviewed the footage were confused. This was not how condemned people were supposed to behave. They had no idea that this was only the beginning. 6 months had passed since the humans arrived on 9. The observation satellite continued its silent watch from orbit, sending data back to analysts who could not believe what they were seeing. Every report was marked with notes of confusion and disbelief. The humans were not dying. They were not even struggling. They were building something that looked disturbingly like a permanent settlement. The colony had grown from a cluster of emergency tents into a proper village. Sam had discovered that the native stone, when properly treated and cured, became incredibly strong. The houses he built could withstand the fierce storms that swept across the planet every few weeks. They could resist the claws of the predators that sometimes wandered too close to the settlement. And they stayed cool during the scorching days and warm during the freezing nights. Price, the colony's chief agriculturalist, had achieved something that they would have called impossible. She had started a farm. The acidic soil of 9 was deadly to most plants from other worlds. Seeds brought from Earth died within days of being planted, but had not given up. She had studied the native vegetation, analyzed the soil composition, and run hundreds of experiments in her small laboratory. The key was the neutralizing compounds, she explained to Jack during one of his regular inspection tours. There are certain plants here that produce alkaline substances to protect themselves from the acidic soil. If we extract those compounds and mix them into our growing plots, we can create pockets of balanced soil where Earth crops can survive. Jack looked at the rows of green plants pushing up through the rust-colored ground. Tomatoes, beans, wheat, things that had no business growing on a Class 15, yet here they were, thriving. How did you figure this out? He asked. Smiled, trial and error. A lot of error, actually. But that is how we humans have always done it. We fail, we learn, we try again. Eventually, we succeed. The crops were not the only success story. Laura had established a medical center that was treating everything from minor cuts to the occasional predator attack. She had learned which native plants had healing properties and which ones were poisonous. She had developed treatments for the respiratory irritation caused by the atmosphere and vaccines against several local diseases. Human immune systems are remarkably adaptable, Laura told Kate one afternoon. We are actually developing natural resistance to some of the atmospheric compounds. Give us a few generations, and our descendants might be able to breathe this air without masks. Kate raised an eyebrow. You are thinking that far ahead. Someone has to. We are not leaving this planet anytime soon. We might as well plan for the future. The security situation had improved dramatically. Cole and his team had mapped the territories of the major predator species within 100 kilometers of the settlement. They had learned the hunting patterns, the migration routes, and the warning signs that indicated danger. These creatures are dangerous, reported during a colony meeting, but they are not mindless killing machines. They follow rules. They avoid areas that smell like humans now. They have learned that attacking us is costly. The colonists had killed 17 of the large armored predators in the first 3 months. After that, the attacks had stopped. The creatures, whatever passed for intelligence in their alien brains, had figured out that humans were not easy prey. More importantly, the humans had stopped being afraid. Children played in the streets of the growing village. They attended school in a building made from native stone. They learned mathematics and science and history, just as they would have on Earth. But they also learned about their new home. They learned which berries were safe to eat and which insects to avoid. They learned to read the weather patterns and to recognize the calls of dangerous animals. Young Danny, the boy who had asked his mother if they would be okay, had become something of a local expert on the small reptiles that lived near the settlement. He had a collection of them in a terrarium made from scavenged materials. He had named each one and could describe their behaviors in remarkable detail. "This one is Spike," he told anyone who would listen. "He looks scary because of the horns, but he only eats insects. He is actually very gentle if you approach him slowly." Lisa, his mother, watched her son with a mixture of pride and wonder. 6 months ago, they had been condemned to death. Now her child was thriving on a world that was supposed to be unsurvivable. The colony had even begun to develop its own culture. Someone had built a musical instrument from native materials, a stringed device that produced haunting melodies. Stories were being written about their journey and their struggles. A new holiday had been established to mark the anniversary of their arrival, a day they called Landing Day. Jack walked through the settlement as the sun set, casting long purple shadows across the stone buildings and the green fields. He stopped to talk with families, to check on progress, to offer encouragement where it was needed. He was proud of what his people had accomplished, but he knew they could not become complacent. "They are still watching," Kate reminded him that evening. They stood on the roof of the central building, looking up at the moving light of the observation satellite. "They expected us to be dead by now. What do you think they are planning?" Jack considered the question. They have two choices. They can admit they were wrong about humans, which would mean admitting their entire classification system is flawed, or they can come down here and see for themselves what we have built. "You think they will come?" "Eventually, when the curiosity becomes too strong to resist, when their analysts demand answers that the satellite cannot provide." Jack turned to face his first officer. "When they do come, we need to be ready, not for a fight. We cannot win a war against the entire fleet, but we need to show them something they have never seen before." "What is that?" Jack smiled in the fading light. "We need to show them what humans can do when the universe tells us we are not supposed to survive. We need to show them that everything they thought they knew about us was wrong." Kate looked out at the village below. Lights were coming on in the windows. The smell of cooking food drifted up to them. Laughter echoed from somewhere near the school building. "I think we are already doing that," she said. Above them, the satellite recorded another peaceful evening in the human settlement. The data was transmitted back to analysts who added it to a file that had grown very thick in the past 6 months. A file labeled with a single word that had never been used in connection with a Class 15 before. Survival. 1 year after the humans had been abandoned on 9, a diplomatic vessel entered orbit. It was a sleek ship, designed for speed and comfort rather than combat. The beings inside had come not to fight but to understand. They had come because the data from the observation satellite had become impossible to ignore. Ambassador L stood at the viewport of his private quarters, all 4 eyes fixed on the planet below. He had sentenced the humans to death in this place. He had expected the matter to be concluded within weeks. Instead, the reports from his analysts had grown more disturbing with each passing month. The humans had not died. They had built a settlement. They had established farms. They had killed predators that should have torn them apart. They had done things that no species in the recorded history of the galaxy had ever accomplished on a Class 15. "Prepare a landing craft," El ordered his assistant. "I will see this for myself." "Ambassador, the surface is extremely dangerous. Perhaps a remote observation would be safer." El turned his 4 eyes toward the younger. "The humans have survived there for an entire planetary cycle. If they can walk on that world, so can I prepare the craft." The landing was tense. The pilots kept their environmental suits sealed and their weapons ready. They descended through the purple clouds and emerged above a landscape that should have been empty of intelligent life. Instead, they saw a village. Stone buildings stood in neat rows. Fields of green crops grew where only toxic vegetation should have existed. A water tower rose above the settlement, connected to a system of pipes and filters that had clearly been engineered with considerable skill. Paths had been carved between the structures, and people walked along them without fear. The landing craft touched down at the edge of the settlement, in a clearing that had obviously been prepared for exactly this purpose. The humans had been expecting visitors. El was the first to exit the craft. He stepped onto the rust-colored soil, his environmental suit protecting him from the corrosive atmosphere. His guards flanked him, their weapons visible but not raised. They were here to observe, not to threaten. A young human approached them. He was perhaps 10 years old by human standards, with brown hair and curious eyes. He wore a simple filter mask over his nose and mouth, but his arms and legs were bare, exposed to the air that should have burned his skin. "Welcome to New Haven," the boy said cheerfully. "My name is Alex. Are you the aliens who sent us here?" El did not know how to respond. He had expected hostility. He had expected fear or anger. Instead, this child greeted him as casually as if he were a visiting neighbor. "I am Ambassador El of the High Council," he finally said. "I have come to see your settlement." Alex nodded. "Uncle Jack said you would come eventually. He is waiting for you at the meeting hall. I can show you the way." The boy paused and looked down at the ground near El's feet. "Oh, watch your step there. The ground snakes are active this time of day. They only bite if you step on them." El looked down and saw a serpentine creature slithering past, its scales a mottled pattern of brown and red. The boy casually nudged it aside with his foot, and it moved away without protest. "You touch these creatures?" El asked, horrified. "Only to move them. They are not dangerous unless you scare them. We have learned how to live with most of the animals here. Come on, I will take you to Uncle Jack." The walk through New Haven was an education. El saw humans of all ages going about their daily lives. They tended crops. They repaired buildings. They carried tools and supplies. Children ran between the structures, laughing and playing games. None of them wore the full environmental suits that they considered essential for survival on this world. "How are you breathing this atmosphere?" El demanded. "The sulfur compounds alone should have destroyed your respiratory systems." Alex pointed to his filter mask. "These help a lot. Dr. Laura also developed a treatment that protects our lungs, and honestly, we are getting used to it. Some of the adults can go outside without masks for short periods now. Our bodies are adapting." They passed a field where humans were harvesting vegetables. The plants were clearly of alien origin, yet they grew in soil that should have killed anything not native to this world. "Impossible," one of El's guards muttered. The soil analysis showed lethal acidity levels. A human woman looked up from her work. Her name was, though El did not know this. "We neutralize the soil before planting," she explained, having overheard the comment. "The native plants produce alkaline compounds. We extract them and treat the growing areas. It took a while to figure out, but once we understood the chemistry, it was not that difficult." Not that difficult. The words echoed in El's mind. This world had killed survey teams in days. These humans spoke of tamming it as if it were a minor inconvenience. They reached the meeting hall, a large stone structure at the center of the village. Jack waited at the entrance, flanked by Kate and several other humans. They were weathered and hardened, their bodies showing the marks of a year spent in harsh conditions. But they were also healthy, strong, and clearly unbroken. "Ambassador," Jack said, his tone polite but not warm. "Welcome to New Haven. I assume you have questions." El struggled to maintain his composure. "This should not be possible. 9 is a class 15. No civilization has ever survived here. How have you done this?" Kate answered before Jack could speak. "With respect, Ambassador, you fundamentally misunderstood what you were dealing with when you sentenced us here. You classified this world as deadly, and it is. But you forgot to consider where humans come from." "Earth," El said, "a class 12 world by our estimates." "Exactly. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day. Predators with claws and teeth. Diseases that spread through the air. Natural disasters that leveled entire cities. Extreme temperatures, poisonous plants, venomous animals. We survived all of it. Not by hiding from danger, but by facing it. By learning from it. By adapting to it." Jack took over. "Your class 15 has dangerous animals. We have been hunting dangerous animals for hundreds of thousands of years. Your world has corrosive atmosphere. We have lived next to volcanoes and industrial factories. Your world has harsh conditions. We have thrived in deserts and frozen wastelands and the depths of our oceans." He gestured at the settlement around them. "You did not send us to our doom, Ambassador. You sent us to a challenge. And there is nothing in this universe that humans are better at than overcoming challenges." El stood in silence for a long moment, his 4 eyes taking in the impossible reality before him. The stone buildings, the green fields, the healthy humans, the children playing without fear. "I sentenced you to death," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Jack agreed, "you did, and we responded by building a home." The ambassador had no answer to that. For the first time in his long career, he found himself completely without words. The Galactic Tribunal reconvened 3 months after Ambassador L returned from 9. The Great Chamber was filled once again with delegates from hundreds of worlds, but the atmosphere was different this time. There was tension in the air, and something else that had not been present during the original sentencing. There was uncertainty. Word had spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. The humans had survived a class 15. They had not just survived. They had built a thriving colony. They had established farms and constructed buildings. They had killed the predators that were supposed to be unstoppable. They had done the impossible, and they had done it with basic supplies and primitive weapons. Species that had previously dismissed humanity as weak and unremarkable now viewed them with something that approached awe. Diplomats who had ignored human requests for meetings were suddenly eager to establish contact. Trade offers arrived from systems that had never shown interest before. The galaxy was paying attention to humanity in a way it never had before. Jack stood at the speaker's platform, but this time he was not a prisoner. This time he was an official representative of the human coalition, recognized by the galactic community as a voice of authority. His energy cuffs had been replaced by a formal diplomatic badge. Kate and Sam stood behind him, along with a delegation of humans from both Earth and New Haven. "Delegates of the Galactic Tribunal," Jack began, his voice calm and measured. "I appear before you today not to seek revenge or to make accusations. I appear to present a simple truth that your leadership failed to understand 1 year ago." The chamber was silent. Every eye, whether 2 or 4 or a dozen, was fixed on the human speaker. "You tried to destroy us by sending us to the harshest world in your records. You believed that 9 would accomplish what your laws did not permit you to do directly. You expected us to suffer and die in obscurity, a quiet end to a species you considered beneath your notice." Jack paused, letting the weight of his words settle over the assembly. "Instead, you proved something that we have always known about ourselves but that the galaxy had never witnessed. Humanity does not simply survive adversity. We transform it. We adapt. We overcome. And we build something new from the ashes of your expectations. He turned to face Ambassador L, who sat in the same elevated position from which he had pronounced the death sentence. Thus 4 eyes would not meet Jack's gaze. You saw our colony, Ambassador. You walked through our streets. You saw our children playing without fear on a world that was supposed to be unsurvivable. What did you learn from that experience? L was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than it had been during the original trial. I learned that we made a profound error in judgment. The classification system is based on assumptions that do not apply to humans. We measured your physical strength, your technological level, your apparent vulnerabilities. We did not measure your determination. We did not account for your adaptability. We did not understand what you truly are. Kate stepped forward with a formal document. New Haven officially requests recognition as a sovereign human colony under galactic law. We have met every requirement for permanent settlement. We have established sustainable agriculture, constructed permanent structures, and maintained a stable population for over 1 standard year. The requirements have been fulfilled. The document was passed to the tribunal's administrative office. There would be debates and votes and bureaucratic procedures, but everyone in the chamber already knew the outcome. The humans had earned their place on 9, and no interpretation of galactic law could deny them now. But Kate was not finished. We also extend an invitation to any species seeking assistance with hostile environment settlement. Our expertise in survival, adaptation, and construction under extreme conditions is available to all who approach us in good faith. If your people need help colonizing a difficult world, humanity is ready to assist. The reaction in the chamber was immediate. Delegates began speaking among themselves. Some were dismissive, unwilling to accept human help after years of treating them as inferiors, but others were clearly interested. The galaxy was full of harsh worlds that held valuable resources. If humans could help unlock those worlds, the economic and strategic benefits would be enormous. Over the following weeks, the requests began arriving. The collective wanted help establishing a mining operation on a volcanic moon with an atmosphere of sulfuric acid. The Union sought human consultants for a settlement on a high-gravity world with extreme temperature variations. The hegemony, despite their traditional isolationism, quietly requested information about human survival techniques. New Haven became more than a colony. It became a training center, a research facility, and a symbol of what humanity could accomplish. Scientists from across the galaxy came to study how the humans had adapted to 9. They analyzed the soil treatment techniques that Price had developed. They examined the construction methods that Sam had pioneered. They tested the medical treatments that Laura had created. And everywhere they went, they brought back the same message. The humans were not what the galaxy had assumed. They were something far more remarkable. Young Danny, now 11 years old, was interviewed by a journalist who had traveled to New Haven to document the human achievement. The journalist asked him what it felt like to grow up on a Class 15. Danny thought about the question for a moment, stroking one of his pet reptiles as he considered his answer. "It is just home," he finally said. "The animals can be dangerous, but we know how to handle them. The air is not great, but we have masks. The food takes some work to grow, but it tastes good when you know how to prepare it." He smiled at the journalist. "I think every world is hard in some way. The point is not to find an easy place. The point is to make any place work." The journalist included that quote in her final report. It was shared across millions of worlds and translated into thousands of languages. A child on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy, speaking with simple wisdom about the nature of survival. Jack returned to New Haven after the tribunal proceedings concluded. He stood on the roof of the central building with Kate, looking out at the settlement that had grown so much in the past year. New construction was visible in every direction. The population had increased as volunteers arrived from Earth, eager to be part of something historic. "We changed something today," Kate said quietly. "The way the galaxy sees us, the way they think about what is possible, that is not going to go back to the way it was." Jack nodded. "They tried to erase us. Instead, they made us visible. They forced us to show what we are capable of." He looked up at the purple sky, at the stars that were beginning to appear in the twilight. Somewhere out there, species that had never heard of humanity before were now speaking their name. Governments that had ignored them were now seeking their help. A galaxy that had considered them insignificant was now forced to acknowledge their worth. "We are just getting started," Jack said. "This is only the beginning of what humanity can do." Kate smiled and put a hand on his shoulder. "Then we had better get back to work." Below them, the lights of New Haven glowed against the gathering darkness. Children laughed in the streets. Families sat down to dinner. Engineers planned new construction. Scientists recorded new discoveries. The colony that was supposed to be a death sentence had become a beacon of human resilience. The galaxy had tried to destroy them. Instead, it had shown them exactly what they were capable of becoming. And they were only just getting started.